Toto Wolff stands in the Barcelona paddock watching a driver he no longer employs take a victory that Mercedes had made look routine all season. Then he says something no team principal of a dominant outfit is expected to admit publicly. He says that if Lewis Hamilton smells blood, he attacks. Mercedes is leading both championships. Kimi Antonelli is pulling away at the top of the standings. So why is the boss of the strongest team on the grid suddenly talking about Hamilton as if he is a danger that cannot be controlled? Because in Barcelona, the story everyone believed was over suddenly came back to life. For 6 races, Mercedes is untouchable. Kimi Antonelli, only 19 years old and in just his second Formula One season, wins 5 Grands Prix in a row. China, Japan, Miami, Canada, Monaco, one after another, without slowing down. He becomes the youngest driver ever to lead the championship, the youngest pole sitter, and the youngest winner in Monaco. Records that had survived for decades fall to a teenager who is only beginning his career. George Russell takes the one victory Antonelli does not claim. 2 drivers, 6 wins, and not a single weekend wasted. Mercedes is operating at a level that no other team on the grid can match. By the time Formula One arrives in Spain, the numbers appear settled. Mercedes leads the Constructors' Championship by 79 points. Antonelli sits comfortably on top of the drivers' standings and looks almost impossible to catch. McLaren, the reigning champions from 2025, have already fallen to 3rd after a disappointing start to the season. Red Bull is down in 4th, and Max Verstappen, a 4-time world champion, is stuck in 7th place and openly frustrated with the new 2026 regulations and cars. This is the important part. Mercedes is no longer wondering whether it can win the championship. Mercedes is deciding which one of its own drivers will take it. That is the dream position every team wants but very few ever reach. It is a fortress with 2 entrances, and both roads lead directly to the trophy. Inside that fortress, the strategy is simple. Keep both cars at the front, allow the rookie and the experienced veteran to race fairly, secure the championship, and worry about internal debates later. Nothing from the outside world is supposed to break through those walls. And for 6 races, nothing does. Then a name returns that nobody inside Mercedes wants to think about. A name that, only 1 year earlier, seemed finished. It is 2025, and Lewis Hamilton is struggling. He has just made the biggest decision of his career. After spending 11 years at Mercedes and winning 6 world championships with the team, he leaves for Ferrari. The most famous driver in Formula One joins the most famous team in motorsport. The entire racing world expects a spectacular partnership. Instead, it witnesses the most difficult season of Hamilton's career. Throughout the entire 2025 campaign, he fails to score a single Grand Prix podium finish. Not one. Across 19 years in Formula One, through different eras, regulations, and cars, he had never completed a season without standing on the podium at least once. Now it happens wearing Ferrari red. His teammate Charles Leclerc finishes 86 points ahead of him. Ferrari ends the season in 4th place. The one bright moment, a sprint victory in China, is quickly overshadowed when Hamilton is disqualified from the main race because of excessive wear on the plank beneath the car. By the end of the season, people begin asking the question openly. Is this the end? Is the greatest driver of his generation about to fade away in a car he cannot master? Even an old rival shares his opinion. Nico Rosberg, the man who defeated Hamilton for the 2016 world title before retiring just days later, watches the season finale and describes the year as painful and incredibly difficult to witness. Yet Rosberg does not tell him to walk away. In fact, he says the opposite. Quitting now is not the answer. Keep going. The story is not over yet. If Hamilton had decided to walk away at that point, this story would have ended very differently. But he does not walk away. He takes time to reset, regroups after the disappointment, and returns for 2026 with something he never truly had during the previous season. A completely new car built under a completely new set of regulations that nobody on the grid fully understands yet. Everything starts from scratch. Every team is working from a blank page, and that fresh start is about to become far more important than anyone realizes. The new season begins quietly for Hamilton. In Australia, he finishes 4th. In China, he takes 3rd place and finally secures his first podium in Ferrari colors, offering the first real sign that progress is being made. Then come 2 frustrating weekends in Japan and Miami, where he finishes sixth in both races, and many of the old doubts begin creeping back into the conversation. But there is one crucial detail that most people completely miss. Early in the season, Ferrari makes a subtle adjustment to Hamilton's car. The team switches away from the brake system it had been using and moves him onto a supplier he knows extremely well, the same brand he spent years driving with at Mercedes. On paper, it looks insignificant. Just another technical change hidden deep within a setup report. In reality, it changes everything. With brakes he trusts, Hamilton can finally feel the front end of the car the way he wants to. He can attack corners with confidence, lean harder on the limits, and push the car exactly where it needs to be pushed. The connection he had been missing throughout 2025 suddenly returns. Confidence follows immediately. Think about that for a moment. One of the greatest qualifiers the sport has ever seen was being limited by a component most fans never even notice. From that point onward, the turnaround is dramatic. Monaco arrives, the most difficult circuit on the calendar for overtaking, and Hamilton finishes second. Canada follows, and he finishes second once again. 2 races, 2 podiums, both achieved while chasing down the Mercedes team that has spent the season dominating the field. The painful memories of 2025 begin to disappear. The driver who struggled to consistently fight for top 5 finishes the year before is now the closest thing the grid has to a genuine challenger. Hamilton himself is quick to acknowledge that he did not achieve the turnaround alone. He openly credits Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur for standing behind him when the results were not there, for refusing to panic during a season that seemed to offer disappointment after disappointment. That faith is now looking like one of the smartest decisions made anywhere in the paddock. The driver Ferrari signed to pursue championships is finally performing like a championship contender. Then Formula One arrives in Spain. Barcelona is a circuit Hamilton understands as well as almost anyone in the sport. He has won there 6 times during his career. It is a track that exposes every weakness in a car while rewarding every genuine strength. He arrives sitting second in the championship standings, 41 points behind Kimi Antonelli. He is still chasing, still viewed by most observers as the outsider. That perception is about to change in less than 2 hours. Race day in Barcelona begins exactly the way much of the season has unfolded. Mercedes controls the front of the field while everyone else tries to keep up. Antonelli leads comfortably. The fortress still appears unbreakable. Then Ferrari makes its move. Hamilton and his engineers commit to an aggressive 3-stop strategy instead of the more conventional 2-stop approach. More pit stops mean sacrificing additional time in the pit lane, but they also provide significantly fresher tires during the closing stages of the race. Around Barcelona, fresh tires can make all the difference. It is a calculated gamble, and for it to succeed, several things need to fall perfectly into place. They do. A virtual safety car appears at exactly the right moment. It is the kind of timing no team can predict and the kind of moment that often decides Grand Prix victories. Hamilton's strategy aligns perfectly with the interruption. Suddenly, he cycles into the lead with fresher rubber than anyone around him. Once he reaches the front, nobody has the pace to stop him. Then the story takes an even more dramatic turn because while Hamilton is pulling away, Mercedes finally shows a crack in its armor. Kimi Antonelli, the teenager who has dominated the season and won 5 consecutive races, suddenly slows down. A power unit failure forces him to pull off the circuit and retire. It is his first retirement of the entire season, and it happens on the exact day Hamilton is delivering a perfect result. The championship leader leaves with 0 points. The driver chasing him takes the maximum available reward. Hamilton crosses the finish line first. It is his first victory as a Ferrari driver, the 106th win of his Formula One career, and his first Grand Prix triumph since the summer of 2024. For one of the greatest drivers in racing history, it ends a drought that had lasted nearly 2 years. The statistics surrounding the victory are remarkable. At 41 years old, Hamilton becomes the oldest Grand Prix winner since 1970, ending a record that had stood for more than half a century. Behind him, George Russell claims second place while Lando Norris finishes third. 3 British drivers stand on the podium together, something Formula One had not witnessed since 1968. For Ferrari, the result delivers the team's first victory in more than 18 months and marks the 249th Grand Prix win in the legendary history of the Scuderia. So the same driver many people had written off just 12 months earlier has now defeated the most dominant team in Formula One on pure pace, strategy, and execution. And standing in the paddock watching it all unfold are two men who understand exactly how significant that moment really is. The first of those men is Toto Wolff. For more than a decade, Wolff led the team that helped transform Lewis Hamilton into one of the greatest drivers the sport has ever seen. He brought Hamilton to Mercedes, won 6 world championships alongside him, and then watched him leave for one of Formula One's biggest rivals. Few people in motorsport history have spent more time understanding exactly how Lewis Hamilton wins races. That is why every word Wolff speaks after Barcelona carries significance. He does not dismiss the victory, and he does not try to minimize what happened. Instead, he openly congratulates Hamilton, saying that nobody worked harder to reach this moment and admitting that if one of his own drivers could not win, then he was glad it was Lewis. Wolff says Hamilton fully deserved the victory. Then comes the statement that should make every Mercedes supporter pay attention. When asked directly whether Hamilton has become a genuine championship threat, Wolff does not pause or hesitate. His answer is immediate. Yes, absolutely. He points directly to the numbers. The season is still young, the championship remains wide open, and the gap separating Hamilton from the lead is only 41 points. In a season with so many races remaining, that deficit can disappear very quickly. Then comes the line that changes the tone from simple praise into a serious warning. If Lewis Hamilton smells blood, he attacks. Wolff knows exactly what that means because he spent years witnessing it from inside the Mercedes garage. He describes it as a switch being flipped. Suddenly, the Hamilton train starts moving, gathering speed and momentum with every race. Once that process begins, stopping it becomes incredibly difficult. Wolff watched it happen repeatedly during Mercedes' years of dominance. He understands the pattern better than almost anyone because he was once the person benefiting from it. Now he finds himself on the opposite side, watching the same force build momentum inside a Ferrari. Think about that for a moment. The team principal leading both world championships, the boss of the team that has won 6 of the first 7 races, is the one warning everyone about Hamilton. This is not a fan making predictions. It is not a television analyst searching for headlines. It is the man whose entire season depends on preventing Hamilton from succeeding. Wolff even offers his own explanation for the resurgence. He believes the new 2026 regulations have produced a car that suits Hamilton's driving style far better than the previous generation. He also highlights the growing relationship between Hamilton and his new race engineer, a partnership that appears to be strengthening with every weekend. Whatever the exact reason may be, Wolff is convinced of one thing. The version of Hamilton that dominated Formula One for years has returned. One insider has already spoken, but he is not the only one. And if you want every twist and turn of this championship battle as it develops, make sure to subscribe because we follow the 2026 season race by race, covering the strategy, the rivalries, the politics, and everything happening behind the scenes. Now we move to the second voice, a man who should have every reason to doubt Hamilton and yet seems to have almost none. If Toto Wolff's opinion carries weight because he was Hamilton's former boss, then the next perspective is even more powerful because it comes from someone who fought him at the highest level. Nico Rosberg remains the only teammate to defeat Hamilton over a full championship season. He achieved it in 2016 while driving identical machinery, and the rivalry between the two became so intense that they barely spoke for years afterward. If there is anyone who understands exactly what it takes to beat Lewis Hamilton, it is Nico Rosberg. That is what makes his reaction so remarkable. Rosberg describes Hamilton's victory in Barcelona as a legendary moment for the sport. He says Hamilton has climbed back to greatness. Standing at the circuit, Rosberg reveals that he personally congratulated his former rival and genuinely felt for everything Hamilton endured during the difficult 2025 campaign. For one afternoon, the old bitterness seems to disappear. Then Rosberg explains why he believes this result is not simply a one-time success. He talks about momentum in the way only a world champion can. Positive results create motivation. Motivation creates happiness and confidence. Confidence pushes a driver to work harder. That harder work then produces even more positive results. The cycle continues feeding itself. According to Rosberg, Hamilton is currently trapped in exactly that kind of upward spiral. As Rosberg sees it, all the pieces are finally coming together. And this next part may be the most important point in the entire story. Rosberg is asked directly whether Hamilton and Ferrari can realistically dream of winning the championship, securing an 8th world title, breaking every record, and finally delivering Ferrari's first Drivers' Championship since 2008. His response is short, simple, and impossible to ignore. They should and they can. Those words come from the 2016 world champion, Hamilton's toughest rival, and one of the few people who truly understands how difficult winning a Formula One title really is. Yet he is telling the world that Hamilton is firmly back in the fight. Two insiders with completely different relationships to Lewis Hamilton. One was his boss. The other was his fiercest rival. Both are studying the same Ferrari, watching the same performances, and arriving at exactly the same conclusion. Something dangerous is building, and the rest of the grid can see it coming. But belief alone is not enough. A championship threat only becomes truly dangerous when the team ahead starts showing weaknesses, and right now Mercedes has one that cannot be ignored. The problem is not Lewis Hamilton. The problem is Mercedes' reliability. Go back just 3 races. In Canada, George Russell is leading comfortably, controlling the race from the front and heading toward a result that could have delivered crucial championship points. Then everything changes. A power unit issue strikes, his race ends prematurely, and 25 valuable points disappear instantly. There is nothing to show for the performance. Now fast forward to Barcelona. Kimi Antonelli, the championship leader and the teenager who had dominated the season without making mistakes, suddenly slows down with a similar mechanical problem and pulls off the circuit. Another Mercedes, another retirement, and another painful zero. 2 Mercedes cars running at or near the front. 2 power unit failures. Only 3 races separating them. For a team fighting for championships, that goes beyond simple misfortune. It starts looking like a pattern. Toto Wolff understands that reality and does not attempt to hide from it. He openly admits that Mercedes cannot expect to win titles if one of its cars keeps throwing away major points every few races. He even breaks down the numbers. 25 points lost in Canada. 18 more surrendered in Barcelona. Then he repeats one of the oldest truths in motorsport. To finish first you have to finish. That is the weakness. That is the opening. And it matters because of what it does to the championship battle. Every time a Mercedes retires, it is not just losing points for itself. It is creating an opportunity for Hamilton to close the gap dramatically. When Antonelli failed to score in Barcelona and Hamilton collected the maximum 25 points, the championship lead did not simply shrink. It took a major hit in a single afternoon. Mercedes still possesses the fastest car on the grid. Nobody is seriously questioning that. But speed means very little if the car never reaches the checkered flag. At the moment, the Mercedes power unit is the one factor standing between total domination and a genuine championship fight. Put all the pieces together and the picture becomes impossible to ignore. Ferrari is improving almost every weekend. Hamilton is rediscovering the form that earned him 7 world championships. Meanwhile, the team leading both standings is being haunted by reliability concerns at exactly the wrong moments. That is the scenario Toto Wolff was talking about. Blood in the water. And everyone in Formula One knows what Hamilton does when he senses an opportunity. This is where the championship stands right now. Antonelli leads the Drivers' Championship with 156 points. Hamilton sits second on 115. George Russell follows closely behind with 106 points. The gap between Hamilton and the championship lead is 41 points, and there are still 15 races remaining on the calendar. Across 15 races, a deficit of 41 points can disappear remarkably fast. One more retirement. One more reliability problem. One more race where Mercedes leaves empty-handed. Suddenly, the lead that looked untouchable only weeks ago becomes vulnerable. And the challenge facing Mercedes is not only coming from Ferrari. Pressure is beginning to build inside its own garage. Russell has already acknowledged that the championship is now Antonelli's to lose. 2 teammates are fighting for the same crown. Every weekend they take points from each other while Hamilton quietly keeps collecting his own. The longer Mercedes manages an internal battle between its drivers, the more opportunities Ferrari receives to close the gap. Elsewhere on the grid, the situation only benefits Hamilton further. McLaren, the reigning champions from 2025, have seen their season unravel because of reliability issues and no longer appear capable of sustaining a title challenge. Red Bull has fallen to the fourth fastest team, while Max Verstappen remains frustrated with the new regulations and stuck far lower in the standings than anyone expected. Questions are even beginning to emerge about his long-term future. Many of the traditional threats that would normally complicate a championship battle have faded away. The path toward the title is clearer than it has been in years, and Hamilton is the driver carrying the momentum. None of this guarantees a championship. 41 points is still a significant gap. Antonelli remains one of the most impressive young talents Formula One has seen in a generation. Mercedes still has time to solve its reliability concerns and restore complete control of the season. But that is exactly the point. A door that everyone believed was firmly closed has suddenly swung open. And the driver stepping through it is the same man Mercedes spent more than a decade helping turn into a champion. In just a few weeks, Formula One heads to Austria, where another chapter of this battle will be written. From now until the end of the season, the same question will continue growing louder with every race weekend. Can anyone inside that Mercedes fortress actually stop Lewis Hamilton? The thing people remember about championship seasons is rarely who led the standings in May. What they remember is the story that refused to die. 1 year ago, Lewis Hamilton had become the target of criticism and doubt. A 7-time world champion was struggling to reach the podium in a Ferrari that never seemed to suit him, while much of the sport quietly wondered whether the end of his legendary career had finally arrived. He could have walked away. Instead, he stayed. His former rival encouraged him to keep fighting, and he listened. Now he stands as the oldest Grand Prix winner in more than 50 years, second in the championship standings, and the single biggest threat to the dominant Mercedes team. The team principal who knows him better than almost anyone is openly concerned. The rival who once defeated him for a world championship believes he can still win it all. And the only thing separating Hamilton from a record-breaking 8th world title is a gap of 41 points with 15 races still left to run. The fortress was supposed to be impossible to breach. Instead, the man Mercedes once let go is now standing at the gates with a hammer in his hands. If you want to follow every twist, every strategy battle, and every championship-defining moment as it happens, subscribe.